Hey guys, it's Quana back again with another review. Hope you guys are having a great day. I just got finished binge watching Selena the series on Netflix, which is about the Tejano music star Selena Quintanilla Perez and her family, and continues the legacy that was brought to us in the 1997 film featuring Jennifer Lopez, and continues the singer's legacy by bringing her to a new generation. Hopefully, you have had a chance to watch the series as well. So, before we get started talking about it, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button down below so that you're ready and getting any new content that I drop on the channel. All right, so hopefully, you got a chance to watch the series because there are spoilers for the series in this review. But I'm going to go ahead and start with my non-spoiler review of the series. Again, the series follows the Tejano music superstar and her family as they develop and grow their band Selena y los Dinos in Corpus Christi, Texas. And this is in the 80s and the early 90s. It talks about how her father really pushes his children, Selena A.B. Abraham Jr., and his other daughter, Suzette, to form this family band. At one point, the family band was built to kind of sustain and bring entertainment to their family restaurant, and then it became a thing that they continued to try to grow at and become successful, and they were. And Selena was. She was charismatic. She was beautiful. She had all of the makings of a major pop star. And unfortunately, she was gunned down just as her English career was getting started. I actually remember listening to Selena growing up. Her songs and her videos aired on one of the local TV stations that kind of played public. It was like a public broadcast station, and so they played a mix of things, and her songs were some of the songs that were played. And then of course I remember the Jennifer Lopez movie in 1997. Now this series stars Christian Serratos. You might know her from the Twilight movies, or more popularly from The Walking Dead, where she plays Rosita. And she is a phenomenal actress. I adore her from the moment she walked on set as Rosita or walked on screen as Rosita. I loved her, and she does a really, really good job, a comparable job as Selena. Now, unlike the 97 movie, the series really delves in a little bit deeper to the family dynamics, and we really find out a lot more about the family's individual lives. Specifically, we learn a lot about AB and his struggle at being a young writer, because he writes the songs and produces the songs for Selena y los Dinos, and we really see him struggling with maintaining a family life, and we see him struggling with writing the music. We also get a little bit more information about Suzette, who initially does not want to be a drummer. She doesn't know any female drummers, and she's really one of the early people who really was famously known for drumming. And so we really get to see more about that. The series as a whole does some things that are really, really well. The soundtrack, and I don't just mean Selena and Selena y los Dinos, I mean the radio hits, the pop hits that really mark the time. They do a really good job of time stamping the setting and giving us the hits and the music that Selena was a fan of and that they would have been listening to in Texas. And most of that is not Tejano music. Most of it is our singers like Paula Abdul. There was Pebbles playing in one scene, Jody Watley, Madonna. Really a lot of really popular 80s top 40 hits that were played. And I just kept thinking, this is a really good mixtape for this show. Like, I really enjoyed hearing some of those songs. There are just a lot of nice touches where we get a lot of information that the 97 film does not go into in terms of the formation of Los Dinos and really how long the band had been together. We get to find out how Pete, who at one point is a singer with the band and also a musician with the band and background singer, how he came to be a part of the band. We get to see Ricky, who was, I believe, a keyboardist. We get to see him join the band. We get to see, of course, how Chris Perez, Selena's husband, joins the band, and so it gives us a lot of information that unfortunately the movie just can't go into in less than 2 hours of runtime. So in that regard, the series does a really good job. Now you may be wondering, should you invest your time in watching the series? And if you haven't yet, I will say that the series is definitely worth a look. At first, as someone who was a fan and is a fan of Selena Quintanilla, not just the Jennifer Lopez portrayal, but I mean literally read books about Selena's life as a kid, I would say that at first I was extremely skeptical. One of the reviews, of course, that Kristen is kind of unfairly getting, and I kind of ascribed to it at first, was the fact that she is slighter or thinner in frame than Selena was. Selena is a little bit curvier. She wasn't fat by any stretch of the imagination. She wasn't thick, super thick. She wasn't super, anything like super curvy. She was curvy. I will say that she was curvy, and her legs, her everything looked firm and strong, and so she was a little bit curvier than Kristen was, and Kristen's been getting a lot of backlash on social media about the fact that they selected this thinner, smaller woman to play someone, especially in such a time where we're talking about body positivity and things like that. However, I don't think that that is fair to punish Kristen for her slight frame when she certainly is a good enough actress to do the job and do a good, competent job in portraying Selena, and I think she did that. If you are more of just like a casual fan of Selena and you're familiar with her, but you're really not you enjoyed the 97 movie, but it's not something that you go back to time and time again, then this series might not be it for you, because every episode kind of focuses on a different thing, but the narrative as a whole is very kind of all over the place. And I think if they had really kind of focused a little bit more episodically, for the series to be as long as it is, then it would have made that more enjoyable for the casual fan or the casual viewer. However, if you are a fan, you are going to enjoy all of the nuances and all the information that we get depicted in the series that is not depicted in the movie. So that is one thing. One negative, which is not anything to do with the acting, but has to do with the musical performances. It is clearly obvious that they are lip syncing to Selena's records. And the problem with that, which it's not a problem that they're playing Selena's music, it's that it doesn't seem like they've done any stripping of the music. And what I mean by that is you can very audibly tell that certain records that are being played were live performances, but they don't match the venue sound. Sonically, they don't match the venue, so they sound either more of an echo when it's a smaller venue, or there sounds like there's a lot more applause when it's a smaller group. So those things kind of throw you off. And also Kristen's lip syncing doesn't always match that of the singing of Selena. And so I went back to look at a couple of those live performances just to kind of see if I could tell if Selena was lip syncing at certain moments. And I couldn't. The way that her facial expressions were, it makes it harder to tell, but I feel like I could tell that Kristen was lip syncing more, and it made that part really awkward. I actually was like, I would much rather have preferred them to do a lot more cutaways to the musicians. And I kept thinking about a movie that maybe some of you have seen, but it's the Temptations miniseries, and they actually had the gentleman who played the Temptations to do live singing. They did overlay it with the actual original tracks, but what they did was they stripped the tracks. They had actual live musicians play so that you get that live musician feel, and then you overlay the singing on top, and it made it seem a little bit more seamless in the moments when they were lip syncing, but they were actually singing, and so they matched. It wasn't like they're trying to lip sync to a track. It was they were singing and the track matched up to them. So that was just something that really kind of bothered me a little bit and made the viewing a little less enjoyable. And I will say that this is a part one. I'm not sure. I did not get a preview, so I'm watching this as everyone else is on Netflix. So I don't know if they're doing 2 parts or 3 parts. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be 2 parts, but this had 9 episodes in it, and it really kind of felt like this could have been a 3-part miniseries with maybe about an hour and a half for each, instead of 9 30 to 40 minute episodes that we got now in part 1, and then I'm assuming we're going to get about the same in part 2. It didn't feel like it needed to be that much. And I will say this, if you're on the fence about whether we even need a Selena series, I get it, because I was on the fence as well. But they bring up someone in the series, and I was like, you know what? How many movies have we had about this person? We can have a Selena series. And that was Elvis. And I kept thinking back to my childhood and all of the Elvis movies and miniseries that they had portraying his life. So I think definitely Selena is worth looking at again, having this series dedicated to her life, bringing her to a new generation. But I do think that they could have done a better job with having this be a 3-part miniseries rather than a part 1, part 2 with so many episodic episodes that really didn't do much. Now, I'm going to go into a couple of spoilers, but it won't be long. So if you have watched the series, feel free to stay tuned. If you haven't, don't forget to click the like and subscribe down below if you liked this review. But we're talking about spoilers now. So one thing that really bothered me about the show is one particular casting, and that was the casting of Julio Macias as Pete. Julio Macias, who those of you who watch Netflix's On My Block know as Oscar or Spooky, he is a extremely handsome guy. Whether he is playing a thug or whether he is playing Spooky in the flash forward with his hair grown out and showing, he is very attractive. And no offense to Pete, but with that long hair, it took away from all of Julio's appeal. When I saw he was going to be in the show, I didn't really stop and analyze it, and I genuinely thought he was going to be playing Chris. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to adore this. And he didn't. Of course, he doesn't look much like Chris, but I think they could have made it work. And he's so charismatic. He's such a charismatic guy. And he doesn't get enough talking time in this series. He is a bit player. And I think for someone with his creds now, especially in a role like Spooky, which people have said is one of the strongest acting performances on My Block, I wish he would have gotten a little bit more screen time. The other thing that I felt about this show was it spends a lot more time on everyone else other than Selena. And of course, that's because Selena's not alive, and other than what she's relayed to her family and friends, we don't know, and probably will never know, certain situations that she went through. And I think they could have taken a little bit more like artistic license to give us scenes of Selena in school interacting. We get like maybe a 2-minute like clip of her in school. We never see her in school as a kid. And this little girl was performing in a band as a little girl. So how interesting would that have been to see how that kind of was brought up, or how that shaped her time in school? Was she a regular kid in school? Even as a kid, was she a regular kid? What was her high school experience like? We only get a small glimpse of it, and we do know that she finished the rest of her high schooling in correspondence. But I think that those things would have been a little bit more roundness and fullness to who Selena was, because we only see her through the lens of her relationships with her family and then later Chris. Now, that might be completely authentic to who Selena was, because we do know that her father was extremely controlling. So we do know that she probably did not get an opportunity to interact with a lot of people. But I do think that it limits the storytelling when it's called Selena and we see so very little of Selena. On the other hand, we see a lot of AB, and I'm here for it. AB is such an interesting character, and I never really knew that he had all of these things going on, because when you watch the 97 movie, and correct me down below if I'm wrong, I didn't know AB was married. I didn't know AB had kids. And for the pacing of the show, we find out that he gets married or has kids not relatively new in their career, because again, they've been doing this since they were kids, but well before the English speaking album ever came out. So we're talking about in the late 80s, he had gotten married and had kids. that is astounding to me because I never knew that he had this whole thing. So he's on tour with his family, but he's also leaving behind family, and that was so interesting. There's a moment where we kind of get to see how he meets his wife. I would have loved a little bit of extra scene with that because it was such a shocking reveal that he actually was like interested in and dating her sister, and then he met her, and then somehow they ended up together. That was such a shocking reveal that the fact that we didn't get to see more of that or what happened there was kind of like jarring a little bit, to be honest. It was a little jarring. Um, the way that they aged the mom in order to make her look like Selena's mom is kind of interesting because they don't really do as much to age the dad, and I kind of felt like that took away. We got to see her age a little bit more in the movie over like a more of a gradual transition, and we don't really get to see. It's almost instantaneous that they age her, and then she just kind of stays that age for the duration of the series. And so that was a little bit jarring. And then we get a little tease of romance for Suzette, and I really would have liked to see more. I would have liked to see a little bit more of the dynamics between the siblings and really some exchanges of like times when they maybe did something to get in trouble or things of that nature. Like really play up that idea because those things are the things that actually show us who they are and they show us who Selena was. I feel like other than knowing that Selena is this great singer, that she does kind of really struggle with her identity as both an American because she wants to assert herself as an American and not be boxed in as a Mexican American, and that does come across, although we don't really see the struggle with the Mexican side as much, but we do see her, we do get the illusions of that, and we of course see her developing her style, developing the clothes as a big part of her area of interest. We get to see that in the show, and of course we see the development of her romance with Chris Perez. But aside from those three things, I don't really know that we know who Selena is in terms of her heart close to her chest. Yes, she cared about her fans, but I don't really feel like we know what kinds of movies. We do know what kind of music she liked, but what kind of movies she liked, just other things that she might have been interested in. Like she seems very quiet and very reserved, and they don't really speak much to that, to the fact that she's so quiet and reserved off stage, but she lights up on stage, and it would have been nice to have them speak to that. Again, I think the biggest downfall is time. I think there were times where the show drags because there were things that we did not need to know. There were scenes that we did not get to hammer home the point that, you know, they had to struggle to come up. It wasn't this meteoric rise, but it was gradual and over time. And I think we got that, and we got that like in spades, like every episode. Instead of them really, like I said, they could have cut about 3 episodes worth of content, made it a 2-hour part 1, and then come back and give us a 2-hour part 2. I just didn't feel the need for as much of the series as we got, especially when a lot of it felt like filler, and we didn't get the things that we would have made the story a little bit more interesting, which is finding out a little bit more of the personal information of the family and the things that they were really struggling with. We see small glimpses of it, but it really felt like it was kind of like inadequate at times. That being said, I do think the series was enjoyable. Like I said, I managed to somehow get past my hurdle of my doubts from part 1, or excuse me, from episode 1, and then continued with it and managed to enjoy it all the way to the end. And I was kind of glad that they did stray away from some of those more iconic scenes that happen in the movie. They give us songs that we don't get in the movie, and they retool some things so that it doesn't look exactly like the movie. So I did like that. Of course, everyone remembers the iconic line from the movie, "Anything for Selena's." Everybody remembers that scene. We don't get that scene in this part, at least not at this point. And I liked that scene because I think that scene in the movie shows how radical some of the fans were. And I just got finished watching a performance of Selena performing Como la Flor, and it's a live performance, and fans are just coming up on stage and they're kissing her. and they're kissing her, and she's dancing with them, and it's a lot of fans. And at one point, you can see Chris's face, and he's like still just trying to stay in mode and playing, but he's also kind of like trying to keep an eye out on her. And I thought that right there is a scene that we need to see. Maybe we'll get it in part 2, but that's a scene we need just to get that feeling of like how close those fans got to her and how accessible she was to them. There's a scene where she's sick and she's hugging some fans, but that really doesn't drive home the point, because anybody goes to work sick. But that and as being a big star and letting fans come up on stage like that, and like you're still just singing, the professionalism, the patience, that would have been a great scene to have seen. Overall, though, I do give the series a B plus. Like I said, there were some things that I think could have been retooled and some casting decisions that were interesting. But other than that, the series was entertaining, and I look forward to part 2. But if you have already seen the series, let me know down below who some of your favorite individuals were, actors were from the series. What were some of your favorite moments? And most importantly, what is your favorite Selena song? Let me know down below in the comments what you think. And until next time, guys, toodles.